Today I will deliver a lecture on enculturation. Every human being goes through a process of enculturation. It is the most complex process of human behavior. In the earliest years of an individual's life, it is largely a matter of conditioning to fundamentals, that is, habits of eating, sleeping, speaking, personal cleanliness, etc. The inculcation of these habits has been shown to have special significance in shaping the personality and forming the habit patterns of the adult in later life. The term enculturation has been introduced in US cultural anthropology as a substitute or alternative for socialization. The two terms are, however, not systematically distinguished from one another. The process of learning to become a member of society, including both formal education and the informal induction into social roles, is socialization. Like socialization, enculturation is generally considered to be informal learning or learning which arises out of social interaction and is thus distinguished in practice from formal education or schooling. But in its broadest sense, enculturation or socialization would include both formal and informal mechanisms. The first agents of enculturation in all societies are the members of the family into which a person is born. Initially, the newborn's mother is the most important member of this household. Thereafter, other household members come to play roles in the enculturation process. Individuals outside the household are brought into the enculturation process with the maturation of the young person. These usually include other relatives and certainly the individual's peers. The latter may be included informally in the form of playgroups or formally in age associations where children actually teach other children. Through the interaction of enculturation with biologically based predispositions, a person acquires his or her personality. Personality refers to the fairly stable patterns of thought, feeling, and action associated with a specific person. Personality includes several components: the cognitive, emotional, and behavioral. The cognitive component of personality includes thought patterns, memory, belief, perception, and other intellectual capacities. The emotional component includes emotions such as love, hate, envy, jealousy, sympathy, anger, and pride. The behavioral component consists of the skills, aptitudes, competence, and other abilities that are developed throughout the course of a person's life. Thus, personalities are products of enculturation as experienced by individuals, each with his or her distinctive genetic makeup. Enculturation begins with the development of self-awareness, the ability to identify oneself as an individual creature, to reflect on oneself, and to evaluate oneself. It is self-awareness that permits one to assume responsibility for one's conduct, to learn how to react to others, and to assume a variety of roles in society. The attachment of positive values to one's self is an important aspect of self-awareness. In all cultures, personal names act as important devices for self-definition. A social group acknowledges a child's birthright only through naming and establishes its social identity. An individual has no identity or self without a name. Naming individualizes a person while at the same time identify one as part of a group. The Navajo Indians from the southwestern United States name children at birth. The baby is given an additional ancestral name after the child laughs for the first time. It is believed by them that the laugh represents an infant's first expression of human language. They even celebrate a first laugh ceremony and invite close friends and relatives. Thus, name-giving customs play a very important role in a person's life journey as a socially accepted member of a culture. Let us get an idea regarding basic personality and model personality. The primary institutions of a society, which include socialization practices and subsistence patterns, form the typical set of attitudes and orientations of its members, which is known as basic personality. This term was used by Abraham Gardiner, psychologically oriented anthropologist, in his study of the relationship between culture and personality. Thus, this basic personality type shapes the secondary institutions of society through social interaction. Model personality is the pattern of personality traits manifested in patterned observable behavior, which occurs with most statistical frequency in a given population. The term was first used by Cora Dubois. This concept represented the attempt to develop a more objective measure of personality traits. A number of anthropologists began to learn about the influence of culture on personality development during the 1930s and 1940s. Social scientists of this period suggested that biology and race are the most influential determinants of human behavior. In the United States, cultural anthropologists began to challenge this view of biological or racial determinism through research on enculturation. Ruth Benedict and Margaret Mead, two women anthropologists, particularly became pioneers in early psychological anthropology. After studying processes like child rearing and enculturation, they put forward the idea that every culture is characterized by a dominant personality type. Let us take a look at some of their studies. Ruth Benedict analyzed the Plains and Pueblo Native American societies and applied the culture and personality theory. In her classic work, Patterns of Culture, in 1934, Benedict classified Pueblo societies as having an Apollonian culture. The cultural ethos of the Pueblos stressed gentleness, cooperation, harmony, tranquility, and peacefulness. According to Benedict, these values explain why members of Pueblo societies were moderate. Benedict, in contrast, characterized the Plains societies as Dionysian. She described that the values and ethos of the Plains groups were almost the direct opposite of those of the Pueblo. Indulgence in warfare and violence were the main features of the Plains Indians. Benedict's analysis included such groups as the Kwakiutl Native American people and the Dobu of Melanesia. Benedict's analysis showed that the culture of a particular society can be studied by studying the personality of its bearers. The patterning or configuration of a particular culture is reflected in an individual's personality. Margaret Mead also contributed significantly to the field of culture and personality. In addition to isolated, small-scale societies located in the Pacific Islands, Mead addressed issues that concerned United States society, particularly adolescence, child care, and relationships between males and females. Mead resided in Samoa for 9 months and interviewed 50 Samoan girls in 3 villages. She concluded that unlike the United States, adolescence in Samoa was not characterized by problems between the young and the old. She attributed the difference between the two societies to different sets of values, which produced different cultural personalities. Mead, in her book Coming of Age in Samoa, argued that Samoan society emphasized group harmony and cooperation. According to Mead, these values resulted from Samoan child-rearing practices. Samoan children were raised in family units that included many adults. As such, youngsters did not develop strong emotional ties to any adult. According to Mead, Samoan children openly learned about sexuality and they were not exposed to conflicting values and political and religious beliefs like the US adolescents. So Mead concluded that Samoan children experienced a much easier transition from adolescence into adulthood than their counterparts in the United States. The studies of Mead and Benedict stimulated a series of research regarding culture and personality and helped in understanding the enculturation process. However, they have been criticized for characterizing an entire society in terms of one dominant personality and for focusing entirely on the non-material aspects of culture. Sigmund Freud, the founder of psychoanalysis, viewed human behavior as a reflection of innate emotional factors. He tried to emphasize the importance of emotions in the development of an individual's personality. According to Freud, personality is made up of 3 sectors: the id, that is unconscious desires, ego, conscious part of personality, and superego, which means internalized values and norms of society. A number of psychological anthropologists to study human behavior used Freud's model of enculturation and personality development. Structuralist anthropology, which was developed by Levi-Strauss, focuses on the relationship between culture and thought processes. He hypothesized that the human mind is structured to produce underlying patterns of thinking that are universally based. Though enculturation plays a major role in producing personality, there are certain limitations. People are born with different innate tendencies and they respond to the environment in a variety of ways. All societies have people who differ with respect to temperament due to these innate tendencies. Enculturation cannot produce people who respond only to environmental or cultural pressures in a uniform manner. Enculturation is not a uniform process. Enculturation experiences are blended and synthesized in unique ways by individuals. Young people behave differently from their parents, even in most isolated small-scale societies. People in any society are always confronted with contradictory norms and society is always changing. This affects the process of enculturation. The early studies of enculturation, called culture and personality studies, focused on culture as if it were an integrated type of personality. These early studies of Ruth Benedict and Margaret Mead provided some important data regarding enculturation processes, but they often exaggerated the significance of cultural determinants of human behavior. A set of anthropological studies were conducted during and after World War II that arose from the Culture and Personality School. These studies, known as National Character Studies, aimed to discover basic personality traits shared by majority of the people of modern state societies. We can thus conclude that enculturation provides the historically developed cultural forms through which the members of society share meanings and symbols and relate to one another.